There was a vampire named Vanitas who was deeply despised. Unlike other vampires born under a crimson moonlit night, Vanitas was born under a blue moonlit night, which brought him nothing but misery. Because of this, everyone feared him and banished him from the village. He wandered alone in the forest, through the darkness and snow, and at that moment, he vowed to take revenge on the vampires born under a crimson night. He created a powerful book, intertwining it with the names of vampires. When a vampire opened it, they were cursed with a fate worse than death. Somewhere, people were looking at a picture of one of them, saying that news was spreading about the appearance of a vampire. Everyone began to wonder if vampires had resurfaced to take revenge on humans after being defeated before. However, some believed that the story of vampires was just a made-up tale, until someone mentioned that their great-grandfather had told them they had seen one. But there was no need to worry, as the church hunters had begun to move. Suddenly, a girl named Amelia fainted, and Noi saved her. He quickly sat with her and offered to take her to the doctor, but she refused to let any doctor other than her own examine her. Afterward, a cat jumped out of a box and leaped onto Amelia, which Noi scolded, saying it was inappropriate. But Amelia didn't care about the cat's behavior and was rather impressed by it. At the moment she asked to know Noi's name, an announcement was made about the airship's departure to Paris, and the captain asked everyone to enjoy their trip. Amelia quickly asked him if it was his first time on an airship, and if he was going to Paris for tourism. He told her he was going to Paris to search for the Book of Vanitas, a cursed book from a folk tale known as the Vampire of the Blue Moon. She asked him if he thought this book really existed, and he replied that he didn't know, but he had received a message from his former teacher confirming that the book was in Paris and asking him to find it. Suddenly, Amelia collapsed on the ground, and when Noi tried to approach her, she warned him to stay back. Then her eyes turned red, and she began to transform into a vampire. At that moment, Vanitas was trying to catch her, and when he suddenly jumped from the window to grab her, he found Noi holding her. He asked Noi not to interfere between them and to let her go, but Noi refused, and a fierce battle broke out between them. Noi quickly carried Amelia and ran away. As for Vanitas, he told Dante that he had underestimated the one with the crimson moon eyes, but he was surprised that he was also a vampire. On the other side, Noi was running while carrying Amelia, who kept saying she felt cold. Soon, someone examined her and told Noi to take her to a clinic, but she suddenly transformed into a vampire again and bit Noi's neck, then scattered shadow thorns to attack the humans. Noi tried to stop her, saying that they were forbidden from attacking humans, but she persisted and didn't realize it. Suddenly, Vanitas burst in and told Noi that this was exactly why he had asked him to let her go. She had shown the signs, a constant cold and shadow thorns. Her cursed name was Eglantine, a term used for deformed patients who suffer from an unrelenting thirst for blood. Then, Dante appeared from behind them, carrying a gun, and asked Vanitas to save her. Noi asked if he was going to kill her and questioned his identity. Dante explained he was a doctor specializing in treating vampires and had come to heal her. Quickly, he pulled out a mechanical spellbook connected by a silver chain. Its cover was made of blue leather, and its pages were as black as coal. He claimed he would restore her true name. After a moment, Amelia returned to her normal self and thanked him for saving her. In a flashback, Noi sat with his teacher, who guessed that he didn't fear Vanitas despite his misfortune and the rumors about him stealing the powers of vampires. Noi asked Vanitas what he had done to Amelia, and Vanitas replied that he had only healed her. Noi found this amazing, especially since his teacher had told him that a vampire's true name was their life force, something that should never be taken away. Noi's admiration for Vanitas's book struck Vanitas as strange, as it was the first time someone had looked at the book with such wonder. When Noi asked Vanitas his name, he replied that he was Noi. Internally, Noi thought of himself as the son of the cosmos before introducing himself as Vanitas, the one who inherited the name and the book of the Vampire of the Blue Moon. Vanitas then invited Noi to join him, assuring him that his combat skills and strong build would make him a valuable ally, especially since the number of rampaging vampires had increased due to diseases distorting their true names. If the cause of this were ignored, vampires would soon perish. Vanitas wished to stop these diseases in his own way, seeing himself as the savior of vampires. As the conversation continued, two police officers arrived to arrest them. Vanitas jumped down, and Noi clung to his legs. In the past, someone had asked Noi if he knew about the cursed vampires who acted strangely and suddenly went berserk. Events moved quickly, and now, in the present, Noi and Vanitas found themselves in jail. Noi asked Vanitas why they were there. Vanitas explained that 10 hours ago, the Eglantine had poisoned him because of his recklessness, causing him to crash on the road and fall into a deep sleep for nearly half a day. Noi questioned why he was locked up when he was just on the airship by chance. Vanitas replied that he had told the police they were partners, so they brought them to jail and confiscated all their belongings. When Noi asked about the book, Vanitas said it had also been seized by the police. Noi yelled at him, saying he was being unusually calm after everything that had happened, and reminded him that his teacher had asked him to ensure the book's safety. Vanitas responded that his teacher's instructions were vague. Noi thought for a moment and admitted Vanitas was right, as his teacher hadn't specified whether to destroy the book or take it away. At that moment, Vanitas told him that if he wanted the book, he needed to join him. Noi quickly realized he had to team up with Vanitas to fulfill his teacher's wish, but he wasn't keen about it, saying that forcing him to do something he didn't want to would harm his mental health. Just then, the jailer came to release them, giving them an invitation from Earl Orlok. Vanitas left the jail with Noi and told him he would show him the way. Suddenly, Noi found himself in the street, with flowers falling everywhere around him. He stood there in shock, but Vanitas welcomed him, saying it was the City of Flowers, and explained that the Earl's invitation was to recover their confiscated belongings and their luggage left on the airship. Soon, they arrived at the Valentina hallway, and Noi asked if this was the Earl's place. Vanitas confirmed it was and began to explain the history of vampires, saying that after the Old War, vampires were forbidden from attacking humans and many had disappeared beyond the borders. However, many vampires continued to thrive in the human world. Therefore, the Queen appointed a vampire to maintain the balance between the human and vampire worlds in Paris. This vampire was the Lord of the Other World, Orlok. As they entered Orlok's domain, one of his men stopped them, telling them not to move. Vanitas was annoyed and said, "Is that how you welcome him when he came on an invitation?" The man replied that ill-mannered fools who didn't knock on doors were no different from intruders. Orlok allowed them to enter, saying he had given permission for the human named Vanitas. Vanitas sat down and asked Orlok to return the book and Amelia, but Orlok told him they would dispose of her. Noi interrupted, saying she had been treated now, and he had seen Vanitas heal her with the power of the book. Orlok lashed out at him, telling him to stop being naive, as there were no cursed spellbooks. Vanitas arrogantly laughed and said that was why he had stolen it. Since Orlok didn't know how to open it, he had summoned him to open it for him. Vanitas then provoked Orlok, saying he could have asked him to teach him how to use it, but Orlok firmly replied that he had summoned him to discuss his next plans, stating he was only planning to save vampires from the path of destruction. At that point, Orlok's aides were shocked and told him not to get carried away. Orlok quickly stated that it was impossible for a vampire whose name had been defiled to return to his former self. Vanitas replied that this was the excuse of fools bound by the customs of the past. At that exact moment, Noi was reminiscing about a vampire named Mina, deciding to behead her as well, since she had been cursed. Moments later, Vanitas quickly snatched the book from Orlok's hand. Orlok mentioned that there had been incidents in Paris caused by vampire-like creatures carrying a curse. Noi became excited, saying they would go after them, and Vanitas would use his book's power to deal with them right in front of him, allowing him to see the book's true essence for himself. Orlok gave them one day, and Vanitas cheerfully told Noi that he had finally decided to help him. Noi replied that he was the one helping Vanitas. When Vanitas asked about Noi's destination, he said he didn't know. However, inwardly, Noi was determined to help Amelia. Outside, Vanitas encountered Dante, and they started arguing. Vanitas criticized him for abandoning Amelia and fleeing. Dante retorted that his contract with Vanitas didn't require him to protect the target and that he didn't work overtime. Soon after, he asked Noi why he was with Vanitas, calling him a fraud. Vanitas introduced Noi to Dante, saying he was the information broker he relied on, but actually, Noi was putting in a lot of effort for money. Vanitas then introduced Noi as his ideal partner. He told Dante that if he wanted more money, he could leave because he no longer needed him. Dante mentioned he had tracked down the killer of the 9, but said it was now useless. Vanitas replied that he had bankrupted him with that information. Dante justified that any information old man Orlok didn't know would be expensive. He then asked them to track down a bat that would lead them to his companion, who was chasing the killer of the 9. They quickly followed the bat, and soon a boy named Johann appeared, telling Dante he had come across important information. The executioner of Ruthven was in Paris, likely because of Vanitas' book, and his friend could be killed. Somewhere, Vanitas told Noi that Thomas Bernoulli was a vampire who had crossed the border 2 months ago and had devoured 9 people in a row. He had been chasing him until Amelia's message reached him. Noi told him that meant he was Amelia's doctor. Vanitas confirmed that. They soon found Thomas Bernoulli, and Vanitas asked Noi to stop him. Noi caught him, and after a moment, Vanitas paralyzed his movements, saying they had to take him to Orlok. Suddenly, a child named Luca appeared along with a woman named Jan, praising Vanitas' skill in controlling Thomas Bernoulli. He asked for the book after telling him they were also vampires. Vanitas asked him why he wanted the book, and Luca replied that it interfered with the name of real vampires, making it an evil tool he wanted to destroy to save the curse bearers. Vanitas then asked if he was accusing him of spreading the curse. Luca confirmed that was true, and that Vanitas would face proper punishment too, as the bearer of the book. Noi told him they were in a hurry and asked to postpone the conversation, but Luca refused, saying someone dear to him had carried the curse and suffered greatly because of it. Vanitas then offered to examine and treat him as a doctor. Luca told him that this person was his brother. Suddenly, Jan exploded, saying it was pointless to have a futile conversation. Luca asked Jan to take the book away from Vanitas. At that moment, Vanitas saw the crimson glove and realized Jan was the executioner of Lord Ruthven. He ordered Noi to run and told him that in the war, Ages ago, he had betrayed more than 1,000 vampires of his kind by allying with humans. However, the only executioner who crushed them all was the one with the crimson glove, Carby Deem, a vampire killer given the sacred name of the sorceress of Hellfire, Jan. Soon, Jan chased after him, and Vanitas grumbled that she had no intention of capturing him alive. Noe threw him away and confronted her while Luca followed, saying she didn't have to kill him because she was no longer an executioner but had become his protector. Somewhere, Noe grumbled that Orlok and the city's vampires were terrible listeners. Vanitas replied that it was natural for vampires to fear the Blue Moon vampires. The events unfolded quickly, and Dante and his aides witnessed Vanitas using the Killer of the Nine to strike against the Hellfire sorceress. Before long, the Killer of the Nine overpowered her, slamming her to the ground. Vanitas smugly apologized for her situation, noting her significant decline in strength, despite being the only executioner capable of eliminating her kind. He introduced himself as Vanitas, explaining that his powers originated from a Blue Moon vampire who had fully consumed his blood, granting him these abilities and allowing him to inherit the Vanitas book. He then asked her to wait and simply observe. Vanitas spoke with the Killer of the Nine, revealing that he knew the killer had been roaming in search of young maiden's blood. He opened his book, uncovering the killer's true name, Pokulikos. Moments later, the vampire returned to his true form, and Vanitas remarked that he should have handled the situation in front of Orlok. However, Orlok's aides assured him it wasn't necessary, as they would inform Orlok themselves. Jan eventually stood up to continue her fight, astonished that despite being paralyzed by Lobguru's poison, she could still move. Before she could attack, Noe appeared, holding Luca hostage and threatening to harm him if she acted against Vanitas. Earlier, Vanitas had instructed Noe to grab and gag Luca, forcing him to watch the negotiation from a distance. In the present, Jan admitted defeat to Vanitas, pleading with him not to harm Luca. Vanitas acknowledged that the boy was her weakness, but expressed admiration for her, calling her incredibly beautiful and confessing his love for her. As Vanitas approached her, Luca angrily intervened, demanding to know what he was doing with Jan. Jan quickly went to Luca, promising they would retreat this time but vowed to kill Vanitas next time. Vanitas reveled in the exchange, expressing his eagerness to meet her again. Luca begged Jan to let him confront Vanitas, but she refused. Meanwhile, Orlok's aides were stunned to discover the Killer of the Nine had been killed and decomposed, wondering who could have done it. After informing Orlok, he decided to postpone Amelia's execution but ordered her to work as a servant at the Chow Cho Hotel under his supervision. Orlok addressed Vanitas, acknowledging that he might have unlocked part of the Vanitas book's power but made it clear he wouldn't set him free. Vanitas complied, saying Orlok could use him as he wished. Orlok then handed him a card, instructing Vanitas and Noe to stay in a room at the Chusho Hotel, prompting Vanitas to suspect he was being watched. Later, Vanitas questioned Amelia about the carnival of the charlatan. All curse bearers, before transforming, see a scene of thick fog accompanied by the carnival, but Amelia couldn't remember. Vanitas then asked Noe, as an archivist capable of reading memories through blood consumption, to help him. Noe drank her blood and revealed that a mysterious black entity had defiled Amelia's name. Suddenly, Dominique de Sade burst into Orlok's office. She was the daughter of Marquis de Sade, the Lord of the Other World, and the granddaughter of Noe's mentor. Accompanied by her mechanical aide, Kreisel, who was a friend of Noe, she apologized for her rudeness and took Noe with her to a masquerade party. On their way, she mentioned that Lord Ruthven was attending the party, rumored to be searching for curse bearers himself. She then opened a gate leading to a world called Altos. As they entered Altos, Vanitas called out to Noe, prompting Noe to attack him for following, as humans were forbidden from crossing into Altos, a spatial anomaly connecting the human and vampire worlds. Vanitas defended himself, explaining he had learned to navigate it by touching a vampire and holding their hand. Dominique questioned why he followed them, and Vanitas accused her of trying to keep Noe away from him, to which she replied that he was an oddity. In the past, Noah's mentor shared with him the theory of the world's formula, explaining that the great alchemist Paracelsus first proposed this idea. According to Paracelsus, there was a realm beyond the human world where everything was defined by structural formulas. He believed that rewriting these formulas could eradicate all diseases and guide humanity toward happiness. Noe began experimenting with the world's formula, but his actions caused the Babel incident, which brought various disasters to humanity. The incident also introduced elements that didn't exist before: glowing flowers, blue radiating metals, and red-eyed creatures, all results of their structural formulas colliding and being rewritten by the world's formula. To counter this, airships with aerial lifting generators and steam locomotives were developed, powered by a mineral called astermate. This mineral was created by rewriting the structural formula of coal. Vampires emerged as a new race when Babel rewrote the structural formula of humans. At a dance party, Noe and Dominique discussed a carriage, but she changed the subject, mentioning they were there to dance. Noe asked her to unfasten his collar so he could wait outside with Vanitas while she changed clothes. When she didn't respond, he wondered if she was upset about him bringing Vanitas. He explained it was necessary to understand the curse bearers better. Dominique admitted she knew he was with Vanitas under her grandfather's orders because of his connection to a book, but she was worried about his personal involvement with the curse bearers. vampires. Later, Noe suddenly craved her blood. At the masquerade, Vanitas gave a flower to a girl named Catherine, but Noe quickly pulled him away, scolding him for his actions. Vanitas teased Dominique, who clarified she was just his friend. Meanwhile, Luca was also at the party, instructing his guards to inform Marquise Machina about his uncle. He bumped into Noe and asked if he was following him, but the guards quickly recognized Noe as a friend. Dominique warned Vanitas not to harm Noe or exploit his power, and Vanitas replied that they weren't just friends as they claimed. Dominique mentioned that if Noe believed in the existence of Blue Moon vampires, she would acknowledge Vanitas's abilities and existence. However, she was puzzled by his constant talk of saving Crimson Moon vampires, suggesting that Vanitas harbored a grudge against them and might have sent someone to kill them all. She wondered how he could prove otherwise while using his name. Just then, Vanitas descended into the party and announced his name to all the vampires, declaring that he inherited the Vanitas book and would prove his allegiance to the Blue Moon clan. Suddenly, he raised his hand, marked by a sigil, saying he knew everyone recognized who was behind the symbol and how powerful he was. He then showed them the book, reassuring them that there was no need to fear, as he would use the Vanitas book to save them, whether they wanted it or not, to take revenge against Vanitas. As everyone was astonished and in disbelief, he asked the curse bearers among them to step forward to save them, but the attendees revolted against him, demanding his death. Meanwhile, Luca was asking Noe what Vanitas was doing and why he was causing such a ruckus at the party. Noe replied that he didn't know. Suddenly, a woman named Veronica appeared, complaining her nose is about to fall off due to the stench of this human rot, Vanitas. At the moment she was about to unleash her weapons on him, she found he had vanished in the blink of an eye, prompting her to demand everyone search for him and kill him. Noe asked Luca if Jan was the one who saved Vanitas, and Luca informed him that she did because he had asked to see them together again, apologizing for what had happened before, saying that his immaturity caused him problems. Noe forgave him, and they went to look for Vanitas. Suddenly, Vanitas woke up, finding Jan carrying him, and he remarked that this was interesting. Jan quickly tossed him to the ground, telling him she didn't expect him to meet her again so quickly. Suddenly, several curse bearers appeared at the party, causing chaos. Veronica wondered if Vanitas was the cause, and soon Catherine also transformed, while the charlatan appeared, killing Luca's guards and trying to harm him. Noe defended Luca and began to attack them. Meanwhile, Jan began showing symptoms of the curse, and Vanitas offered her his blood to drink, but she protested, saying, who would want to drink the blood of a human like him? He convinced her she had to if she wanted to save Luca, warning her that her fangs might kill him, but he replied that he didn't care, saying he was in love with her. At that moment, Noe asked the assailants for the second time who they were, and one of them replied they were charlatans. Noe returned to attack again, but the charlatan suddenly claimed to recognize him, saying he saw him in someone's eyes. In that moment, Noe recalled a memory from his past when he and Dominique were young. They had visited together, and Dominique asked him what happened to his parents. He replied that he didn't know. His grandparents had found him crying under the snow. Louis mentioned that they likely kidnapped him and raised him until he could eat, but Noe cried and insisted his grandparents weren't human. As the events unfolded, Noe explained that the kidnappers caught him, and after his grandparents died, he lived in the human world until his teacher bought him. Louis asked why he called him teacher, and Noe replied that it was because his teacher had asked him to use that title instead of my lord. Dominique felt pity for him, saying he must have suffered a lot, but Noe said he enjoyed himself, eating what he liked, and most importantly, he had entered the world of vampires. Louis laughed, calling him a strange person. In that moment, Louis and Dominique became Noe's first friends. The next morning, they met a group of children named Mina, Fred, Jill, and Fanny, and asked to play together. They quickly bonded and even found a secret hideout. Later, Dominique learned about Noe's ability to see memories by drinking blood, and asked him to try it on her. She then insisted he try it on Louis as well. Noe attacked Louis, then cried, saying he saw Louis sitting alone and withdrawn in the darkness of the forest. He felt sad for him, and wished the archivist's power he possessed was stronger, so he could see the past better. Days passed, and Dominique visited Noe monthly. Meanwhile, Louis spent his days in his teacher's castle. One day, Louis told him he had been sick since birth, which was why he was moved to his grandfather's castle in case of emergencies. One night, Dominique was scared of thunder, so she and Noe went to Louis's room and asked to sleep with him. She told him she wanted to stay in the castle because her joy was playing in the forest, while at home, all she did was study and attend lessons. Louis told her that when she grew up, she would realize how much everyone appreciated and loved her. One day, while Noe was playing with Dominique under the blue moon and expressing his admiration for her, Louis was asking his grandfather about the curse bearers. He mentioned that he had read documents about his illness in his study and asked if his parents had given birth to Dominique to make him forget about her. He then asked what his grandfather intended to do about it. His grandfather told him he had no intention of doing anything. Louis was free to do as he wished, but he would only observe his desires. Days rushed by, and Dominique Dominique learned about their friend Mina's execution. She went to tell Louis and Noi, but Louis surprised them by already knowing, explaining that it was because she was a curse bearer, and curse bearers were beheaded by an executioner. Noi suggested they save her, but Louis yelled at him, saying it was impossible to remove the curse of a blue vampire. Noi argued they should try, but Louis insisted there was nothing to be done, so Noi sat and cried alone. When Dominique came to him, he suggested they escape with Mina from the village. Noi and Dominique succeeded in smuggling Mina away, but she showed symptoms when she met their friends and quickly drank Fred's blood. Suddenly, Louis came and drank her blood, telling Noi and Dominique he was glad they were safe. But soon, Louis began showing symptoms as well, drinking Fanny's and Jill's blood and demanding more. Noi ordered Dominique to flee, then tried to calm Louis, telling him he knew Louis was angry with him for not listening. Just as Louis was about to sink his fangs into Noi's neck, the teacher appeared and cut off Louis's neck. Noi cried hard over his childhood friend. Days passed, and Dominique entered Noi's space holding a box, telling him that Louis had left it with her for safekeeping until the appropriate time. When he saw the box contained stakes, he knew Louis wanted him to kill him in the way he wanted. Noi cried, saying he couldn't save him. The charlatan told him that he surely suffered because he couldn't save his friend, so he wanted Noi to give him his real name so he could send it to his friend. Just as Noi was about to be cursed, Vanitas appeared behind him, saving him and asking if he had twisted his ankle while dancing. Noi quickly remembered his teacher, warning him never to let anyone take his true name, as it was the essence of his being his life itself. At that moment, Vanitas suspected these were the charlatans, while Noi noticed blood on Vanitas's neck and asked if he was hurt. Vanitas didn't answer, saying it was a secret. Right then, one of the charlatans tried to attack Luca, but Jan acted faster and saved him. Vanitas asked if they were responsible for all the commotion, and soon the curse bearers attacked them. The charlatan fled, telling Noi he was impressed and that next time he would know his real name. However, Jan chased him on Luca's orders. Dominique soon arrived, looking for Noi, and told him there was a huge commotion in the grand hall. She asked him to stay strong because all the curse bearers had appeared at once, and some guests had gone mad from the sound of the curse bearers. Vanitas then spoke up, explaining that the cursed name for such a phenomenon was the Monstrous Orchestra, a rare name linked to gatherings of the afflicted. He described how these afflicted individuals created a sound called cacophony, which drove those around them to madness. Dominique asked if he could save them, and he promised to do his best. She said she would protect him and introduced him to his first patient. He quickly treated everyone, but one curse bearer remained. Just then, Veronica appeared and ordered Vanitas to be killed, blaming him for the chaos and declaring he must be slaughtered. Dominique told him to flee quickly with Noi. Veronica then questioned her about what she was doing with a human. Meanwhile, Vanitas saw a girl named Catherine transform into a monstrous creature, killing one of them. He stated there was no way to save someone so deformed and begged her to let him kill her before she harmed her little sister. Noi tried to stop him, but Vanitas pushed him aside, telling him not to interfere. He quickly killed her, which made Noi furious. Noi reminded him of his promise to save the vampires in his own way, whether they wanted it or not. Suddenly, Veronica attacked them with her weapons. Noi was surprised she could still rewrite forms despite her obscured vision from the mask. She launched her attack on Vanitas, saying she would freeze him first in front of sweet Dominique, who tried to stop her. After that, she would shatter him into pieces. Noi cursed the situation as he found himself paralyzed from her latest assault. Just as Veronica was about to strike Vanitas, Mr. Rothman stopped her, stating that the Queen's fangs could not misuse their powers, and asked her to explain what was happening. She told him that Vanitas was a human from the Blue Moon clan and showed everyone the clan's sigil on his arm. A large number of curse bearers appeared, and she accused him of using the Vanitas book to spread the Blue Moon curse. Rothman approached him, asking if he had heard what was said, and if he was the one who turned the curse bearers to ashes. Vanitas admitted he had. At that moment, Nui stood up and defended Vanitas, asking Rothman not to judge without verifying the facts. Rothman introduced himself as a servant of Her Majesty the Queen and a member of the Senate. Just then, Luca entered and called Rothman uncle, questioning what he intended to do with Nui and Vanitas. Rothman replied that he would take them under his care, explaining that harming his guests would be like attacking him personally. Soon, Nui lost consciousness. Events moved quickly, and Nui experienced something like a dream, where his teacher urged him to engage with the people connected to Vanitas' book. He didn't need to determine if the book posed a threat, he just needed to immerse himself in the situation. Nui soon regained consciousness and opened his window to find Vanitas sitting in a high place, which made him think Vanitas liked heights. He asked what had happened, and Vanitas explained that Mr. Rothman had calmed the situation and sent everyone away, making them his guests now. Nui then insisted on asking about the revenge Vanitas had mentioned earlier. Vanitas admitted he had lied to everyone because he only wanted to catch the vampire's attention. He realized he acted that way because he had surrendered to something. Vanitas then snapped at Nui, telling him to stop evaluating him all the time, and that he didn't want any relationship between them from now on. Nui reminded him that he found him interesting and wanted to see the results of his actions, so he decided to stay with him. Vanitas replied that Nui could do as he pleased, and Nui promptly apologized. When asked why, he simply said he wanted to apologize. Moments later, they sat at the table, and Nui expressed his happiness upon seeing the dessert, tart tatin, on the table. He thanked Luca Dominic for suggesting it. She told him that Nui had always loved tart tatin. Nui then shared that his teacher always brought it back as a gift from the human world. Luca mentioned that a vampire like him was said to love it too, which was why he had brought its recipe from the human world. After this, events unfolded, and Luca thanked Nui because thanks to him, he and the other vampires were saved. Jan also thanked him for protecting Luca during her absence, but he told them they misunderstood. It was Vanitas's power that saved everyone. Luca said he was aware of that, then turned to Vanitas and told him he recognized that everyone survived because of him. However, before he could express his gratitude, he had to apologize to Jan for their first encounter, as he had forced himself upon her. Vanitas rudely responded, asking if he was saying this because of the kiss. Luca yelled at him, informing him that he didn't need to apologize to Jan, as they were in love. He then revealed his neck to prove his statement. They all saw Jan's mark, which appeared after vampires had their fill of their victims' blood. When she claimed she didn't recall doing that, he told her he wasn't surprised her memories were hazy. Jan then fell silent, and Luca started yelling at her, asking if she had really drunk Vanitas's blood, and how she could leave her mark on a man from the Blue Moon clan, as it was as if she was saying he belonged to them. Vanitas informed him he was taking the joke too far. That was indeed Jan's mark, but she hadn't been conscious at that moment. She almost lost her mind because of the curse bearer's voices. That's when she attacked him. Luca rejoiced, saying that it was comforting. There was no way she'd leave her mark on a rude and selfish man like Vanitas unless she had been unconscious. He then stated he was happy she was okay, and soon Jan picked up Vanitas and escaped through the window, saying she would borrow him for a moment. Nui followed behind them, and somewhere, Jan asked him why he had fabricated the lie. He replied that he understood from her looks that she didn't want Luca to know about her thirst for blood. He then asked her for the second time if she was a bearer of the curse. She told him she could control her thirst for blood as long as she was taking her medication, but the effect of the medicine wore off quickly that night. He commented that having a medication for that condition was interesting and warned her not to talk about it with anyone. He approached her and reassured her he was not the type to disclose the secret of the woman he loved, but he had two conditions. First, she couldn't drink the blood of anyone else, as he felt happy when she drank his blood, so she had to tell him if she wanted blood at any time, and he would give her as much as she wanted. She then asked him about the other condition. He told her that from now on, she had to call him by his name, not the human. She called him Vanitas, and then she began to drink his blood. Meanwhile, Nui was watching them from a distance. At that moment, Dominic approached him and asked about the reason for his paleness. He told her his chest had been hurting ever since he heard that Jan had beaten him to drinking Vanitas's blood. He had always believed his blood was special, and Jan had marked him to keep it for herself because of the pleasure it brought. As events unfolded further, during the party, Nui reached out to Dominic to dance, but instead, she took Jan to dance with her and teased Nui. Jan told her she used to be a tormentor, and if anyone saw her dancing with her, her reputation would be ruined. Dominic responded that her father always said a person's desires come first, so she didn't care what would happen. Meanwhile, Nui and Vanitas were watching them, and Nui suggested to Vanitas that he should dance with Jan. He admitted he wasn't good at dancing and was afraid he might hurt Jan's feet while dancing. Nui offered to teach him. While Nui was teaching Vanitas to dance, he asked him about love. Vanitas confessed he didn't know what it meant, but felt his heart race when he saw Jan. To him, that was love. He glanced at Dominic and asked him what he loved about Jan. He told him he loved her strength, beauty, gentleness, and how she teased him, but he believed she would never love him back. Nui then asked him if he didn't want her to share the same feelings. Vanitas replied he didn't need that. Events moved swiftly, and Nui prepared to meet Mr. Rothvan, known not just as a senator, but also for his role in ending the war between humans and vampires. Dominic asked him if he knew any information about Luca, quickly informing him that it wasn't important, as Luca would tell him everything himself. After that, she apologized for inadvertently getting him involved when she brought him to Altus, and now she had to leave him in Altus due to an urgent invitation from the Desade family. Nui visited Mr. Rothvan in his office, where he was greeted warmly. When Rothvan asked if something was on his mind, Nui mentioned that Dominic couldn't believe that morning that he knew nothing about him. Rothvan replied that this was normal, as he was one of the formless followers, and he openly admitted that his teacher deeply hated him, even refusing to say his name. He suspected Rothvan had erased all traces of him to keep him hidden from Nui. As their conversation went on, Rothvan started explaining a machine to Nu, calling it a fractal engine that the Marquis Makina had given him. He pointed to a lamp powered by astromite, and Vanitas quickly asked him to get to the point. Rothvan said that Luca had told him everything about that day, and they were responsible for saving people and minimizing losses as much as possible. Vanitas then asked about Rothvan's opinion on the charlatans. Rothvan said he always believed they were hallucinations only visible to curse bearers, but he thought their goal was to kill Luca. The chaos stirred up by the curse bearers was an attempt to distract the Queen's fangs, since the black shadow called Ninya was stealing the light in Furs bearers, the Black Sin Fangs, the true names of vampires. It was no wonder that curse bearers existed. Nui questioned questioned why they wanted to kill Luca. Rothman explained that he held a position and authority next to the queen, so many regarded him as an obstacle in their path. He was the Grand Duke and a close advisor to Her Majesty the Queen. Nui noted that Luca's succession to the position hadn't been officially announced, and Rothman leaned in, telling him his blood froze when he learned of Luca going to the human world. He advised him to be more careful. At that moment, Nui spoke, asking about his brother who was searching for the book for his sake. Rothman requested that he refrain from discussing this matter because freeing Luca's brother from the curse was not in his favor. The conversation took a slight turn, and Vanitas asked Rothman to take him to his queen. Rothman was surprised by his strange request and told him he thought the curse was related to the queen. Jan intervened, asking what he was saying, while he persisted, claiming a small meeting wouldn't hurt. He questioned why the queen had been absent from the public for so long, confining herself, and he doubted whether the queen was even alive. As soon as Vanitas spoke these words, he saw Rothman's true anger. Rothman grabbed him by the neck and injured him, ordering him to leave immediately because every word he said about the queen was false, and he wouldn't allow him to enter his castle again. Afterward, Vanitas told Orlok about the incident with Rothman, and Orlok yelled at him, accusing him of madness for daring to insult the queen. Soon after, Dante met with Vanitas and told him he had new information. Yesterday, they located the curse bearer who entered Paris a while ago, but he was kidnapped before their eyes. Unfortunately, his aide Rich was also caught up in it while trying to rescue him, as the kidnappers believed she was a vampire, but they fled immediately once they realized she was a dhampir, a mix between humans and vampires. Dante quickly tossed a button at Vanitas, explaining he'd picked it up from the kidnapper's coat. The suspect Orlok had been trailing, and the mastermind behind the vampire disappearances turned out to be a unit from the anti-vampire church, the Hunters. Within the church, someone asked the leader if he'd heard anything about Vanitas. The leader replied, stating that Vanitas was a poor soul forced to follow the Blue Moon clan. He added that vampires gathered around him to exploit his power, and they must use their abilities to save him. Vanitas told Noi that the Paris catacombs were once a stone quarry, later turned into a vast ossuary, and now a tourist attraction. When Noi admired it, Vanitas mentioned that what they saw was only a small part of the Parisian ossuary. Noi wondered if they could catch the hunters Dante saw entering the catacombs. Vanitas wasn't sure, but recalled that hunters had exterminated vampires flooding the tunnels during the Paris War. Rumors suggested the tunnels were still their base, which might explain Dante's presence. Noi suggested asking Orlok for help, but Johann appeared, warning that another war could erupt due to the dangerous relationship between hunters and vampires. Minutes later, they stood outside the catacombs. Vanitas scolded Dante for the foolish idea of searching for clues inside. That evening, Vanitas and Noi disguised themselves to investigate the hunters' catacombs. This time, Vanitas knew the place well. They were stopped by two guards, borrowed their clothes, and Noi noticed Vanitas walked confidently. Vanitas warned Noi to beware of the hunters' eyes if they fought. They arrived at a skull-filled area, and Noi remarked on the difference from before. A voice behind them said all the bones belonged to vampires, pointing to a skull with fangs. The lingering signs of rewriting indicated a high-ranking vampire, all killed by their ancestors with the killers' names carved above. The ancestors competed over the number of vampires they killed. Roland, the blessed sixth Patalan, with a jade stone, introduced himself. Vanitas guessed he was one of the 12 leaders. Roland asked their identities, and Vanitas gave fake names, claiming they were guards who found a secret passage and got lost. Roland said he was also lost and took them along. Vanitas whispered to Noi that they were in trouble if Roland took them to the guard room. As they walked, Roland attacked Vanitas, throwing a vial at Noi and telling him to close his eyes. Noi's sight was damaged. Roland confirmed Vanitas was a vampire, as the light blinding his eyes revealed. Roland threw Vanitas into a cell and asked if they'd killed the guards whose clothes they stole. He emphasized that no vampire hunter leaves alive, as they hunt heretic, red-eyed beings. Noi started complaining about his blurry vision, addressing Vanitas and asking him to leave. Roland, however, was surprised to see Vanitas before him. He approached Vanitas with pity, noting that Vanitas was forced to stay among vampires in the Blue Moon clan. Roland mentioned that rumors about Vanitas being exploited by vampires were true. Vanitas became defensive, arguing that hunters wouldn't change. They'd always feel pity for people and look down on them. He emphasized that he wasn't like them, and that everything he did was by his own choice. While Roland was talking to Vanitas, Noi began to regain his vision and realized he could move and fight. He suddenly attacked Roland, who was shocked by Noi's speed. No vampire had ever moved after being hit by the light before. Vanitas warned Noi that hunters use enhancements to boost their power and told him to be cautious. The fight escalated, and just as Roland was about to kill Noi, Vanitas found a way out of the cell and attacked Roland, helping Noi escape. Roland's assistant soon arrived and informed him about Vanitas and Noi, joining Roland to search for them. Meanwhile, Noi and Vanitas were hiding elsewhere. Vanitas explained that he was looking for a man named Moro, who was obsessed with vampires and had been expelled from the hunters for his madness. He showed Noi a button Dante had taken from a kidnapper, marked with the number 128, and explained that recent recent kidnappings weren't done by hunters, but by humans enhanced through Moro's experiments. Roland announced over a loudspeaker that there were Intruderson, a silver-haired vampire, and the other a black-haired human. He wanted the human alive at all costs. He mentioned that Oliver would be angry about the chaos, and that Maria suggested he should have reported the human as part of the Blue Moon clan. Roland replied that he would announce it later as appropriate. Suddenly, Roland was shocked to see his automatons attacking his men. One of his men noted that Noi and Vanitas seemed to know the maze too well, as if they had something strange about them. Elsewhere, Noi asked Vanitas if the book could interact with the machines. Vanitas explained that it interacted with the astromite that powered the automatons. Noi wondered internally how Vanitas knew the catacombs so well, and what his connection was to Moro. Vanitas then confessed to Noi that his parents were killed by vampires, and he was saved by hunters. He was raised in the church to become one of them. However, Moro noticed him during training and made him a test subject, which was why Vanitas was searching for him. He had spent years in the maze and knew it well. Vanitas asked Noi how he felt about vampires, and Noi replied that vampires weren't different from humans. Both were selfish and savage. Suddenly, hunters attacked them, but Vanitas told Noi to close his eyes, and they escaped again. Vanitas quickly told Noi that they needed to defeat Roland without fighting, as he was the strongest hunter, and they needed to find Moro quietly. Vanitas noticed Maria, one of Roland's assistants, preparing to attack them. He grabbed her, intending to use her as a hostage. Noi objected because she was a woman, but Vanitas ignored him. Events moved quickly, and Noi appeared before Roland and George, threatening to harm Vanitas. George tried to warn Roland that it was a trap, but Vanitas called out for help, and Roland fell into the trap. Noi fought Roland, then introduced himself, explaining that he had come with Vanitas to investigate something. He apologized for intruding without permission, but swore they hadn't harmed the guards. He asked Roland to listen to him. Afterward, Noi sat with Roland and told him the truth about Moro still being alive. Roland was shocked. He scolded Vanitas for taking Noi hostage, but Vanitas assured him he hadn't harmed a single bone. Roland noted that Noi was different from other vampires and offered him friendship and help in searching for Moro. During their search, they were surprised to find that Moro had prepared a celebration for Vanitas, welcoming him back as Sample 69. Moro called himself the Doctor and reminded Vanitas of his past. Vanitas said it was an honor to meet him again, and Moro asked him about the people he was with, mentioning they were armed. Vanitas replied that they were his associates and had been informed along the way about the great experiments he conducts. They were impressed with his ideas and insisted on accompanying him. He added that if they were bad people, he would have to kill them. Noi then asked Vanitas what he was planning, and he told him that if they praised him, he would share what they wanted to know. They would squeeze out every bit of information he had about the kidnapped vampires. After that, he would either hand him over to the hunters or kill him himself. Soon, Moro welcomed them, saying that Sample 69 had indeed told them about his research on vampires. He wanted to become a vampire one day. Although he initially helped the church to study vampires for scientific purposes, the more he learned about them, the more he discovered they were a new species of humanity, evolved from the peak. He desired to be like them. However, the foolish church treated him like a madman, wasting his time and efforts. The worst day for him was when a Blue Moon vampire attacked his lab, destroying his research and equipment. His secret was revealed to the church, and he nearly died. Vanitas apologized for what happened, and Moro told him he was glad he returned, as he was Sample 69, who had always aided him in his research and experiments. He had certainly come back to help him again. Vanitas told him that the moment he heard about the repeated disappearances of vampires, he felt that he was still around, conducting research. But how had he returned to that old lab? Moro replied that there was a marvelous model helping him with that, someone who understood his research and helped him return, but he couldn't tell him about it. After that, he showed them a vampire's eyes he had harvested recently and kept. He said he extracted the parts he wanted from the vampires for his experiments before they turned to ash. He then looked at Vanitas and said the color of his eyes had changed, just as he had expected. They had transformed from dark blue to light blue, resembling copper sulfate. He then asked him to allow him to extract one of his eyes for analysis. When he began to touch Vanitas, Noi launched at him, stating that he wouldn't allow that and ordered him to stop referring to people by numbers. At that moment, he realized that Noi was a vampire from his eyes, for which Roland thanked him, saying he would have been about to kill him if he hadn't acted. Just then, Vanitas asked Noi to hold Moro tightly and inquired about the identity of the marvelous model supporting him. But Moro replied with another question, wanting to know who Noi was. Suddenly, the model appeared, and the Dr. Moro thanked him for saving him, calling him the Spider. At that point, Noi realized that the charlatan, Ninja, and Dr. Moro were all connected to each other. In that moment, the vampire that Dante was after awakened, and Vanitas tried to seize Moro. Before he could disappear, he asked him about number 71, stating that the vampire took him along hadn't he returned with him yet. At that moment, Vanitas collapsed, and suddenly he awakened when a predatory shadow appeared, beginning to devour Moro's assistants. Suddenly, the shadow began to attack them, and Vanitas told Roland that resisting it it wouldn't work. They needed to remove the curse bearers from within it. Then Vanitas took a hit from the shadow and lost consciousness for a moment. When he came to, he asked Nui to take everyone and leave the room, as the shadow would disappear once it devoured the curse bearer. Then they could trap it inside the laboratory. Nui asked if there was any way to save him, and Vanitas admitted he didn't know how he would definitely remove the curse from within him. There was nothing he could do, but Nui thought of a crazy idea, which Vanitas opposed, telling him he would take care of himself and that it wasn't necessary for him to be there. At that moment, Vanitas declared that he was a doctor and would save the vampires. Then he grabbed the book and asked Roland to protect him and Nui. They both fell into the mouth of the shadow, and moments later, they emerged with the curse bearers, victorious over the shadow. Suddenly, the laboratory exploded, and Vanitas urged them to run because it seemed the lab had a device set to explode when things went wrong. Afterwards, Roland urged them to escape, saying he would deliver the vampires they had found to Orlok because he didn't want them to be captured and interrogated by the hunters for entering without permission. They thanked him and ran away. After they left, Oliver met Roland and punched him for the explosion he heard, then asked what he had done wrong this time. Roland told him he was with a vampire and had seen him laughing with a human, and they seemed to be enjoying themselves. Oliver was shocked and said that such behavior brings disaster. If the other hunters found out, they wouldn't let him go. Things moved quickly when Amelia handed Vanitas an invitation that had arrived at the hotel, and he asked her to deliver it to him. He asked about the courier's appearance, but she hadn't seen who brought it. He quickly put on his coat and prepared to leave. Nui asked where he was going, and he replied it was a secret. Then he ran into Jean, who asked him out on a date. He was surprised by her sudden change, and she explained that she could have killed him during their first meeting but chose not to. She had saved Luca and the curse bearers despite being insulted. This was why she found herself thinking of him day and night, hinting that she felt love for him and wanted him to give her a chance to prove her feelings were genuine. Just a short time ago, Jean had been complaining about Vanitas chasing her and had asked Dominique for help to get rid of him because she couldn't stand him by her side. Dominique told her that Nui said Vanitas didn't care who he loved, so she needed to pretend she had fallen for him to get rid of him. Jean took her first steps, and when she confessed her love to Vanitas, she was shocked to see he was taken aback by her change and fell for her act. Deep inside, she thought to herself that she would toy with him in the palm of her hand. He quickly told her she was beautiful and took her on a date. Dante saw them and began to wonder about their pairing. Suddenly, he found Dominique in front of him and asked her what she was doing, to which she replied she was following them. But as Jean crossed the street, a car almost hit her, and Vanitas saved her, asking if she was okay. At that moment, Dominique remarked that she felt Jean was easy prey. While Nui was comfortably sleeping in the hotel, Ruthven appeared above him, asking if he had good dreams. He then took him to an old restaurant from the 19th century, telling him it was one of his favorite spots in the human world, and that he had reserved the whole place to talk to him in peace. Nui asked what he wanted to ask, and Ruthven said it was about Vanitas. He knew he would never divulge any information about himself, which is why he came to him. Nui said he didn't know anything about Vanitas' past. Meanwhile, Dominique and Dante were watching Vanitas and Jean, with Dominique saying she had helped pay for that date, so she needed to keep an eye on them. Jean was astonished by Vanitas' personality, which drove her crazy. He seemed so nice despite his previous arrogance. Back with Nui, he asked Ruthven why he felt so at ease talking to him, as if he were speaking with a teacher. Ruthven told him he had worked as a teacher for a while when vampires hated humans. Many students loved him and gathered around him, but after teaching them everything, they were all killed. Nui apologized, but Ruthven shifted the conversation, saying he wished he had a student like Nui, though he was worried Vanitas might take advantage of his kindness. Nui disagreed, stating that Vanitas could exploit everyone but would never hurt anyone. Although he was a contradictory person who saw humans and vampires as savage, he still felt lonely. In the park, with Jean and Vanitas, suddenly, a child fell and got hurt. When Jean saw the blood, her eyes turned red, and people pointed at her, saying she was a vampire. Vanitas tried to calm her down, and suddenly Dante appeared, telling him to escape with Jean. Back with Nui, he asked Ruthven whether he was an enemy or ally since he was raised by humans. Ruthven replied that whether someone was a vampire or human made no difference to him. His enemy was only those who harmed his loved ones. He then said that he had failed the test and suddenly lunged at him, starting to drain his blood. Back with Vanitas, he asked Jean once more if she was a curse bearer, and if she had seen the charlatan, but she fell silent. He asked her suspiciously if someone had warned her against speaking. As Vanitas escorted Jean back, he asked why Luca allowed her to meet him alone. She explained that Luca was with his older brother, and she had been given the day off, with permission to accompany him. At that moment, Vanitas thought of Ruthven and left her to rush back to the hotel to find Nui, who he discovered had fallen off the bed and was deep in sleep on the floor. Earlier, Ruthven had drunk Nui's blood and commanded him to swear his obedience no matter what happened, which he did. One of his aides asked why he hadn't killed Nui, and Ruthven Ruthven replied he had changed his mind. He didn't know why the teacher kept Nui close, so it was wise to keep him hostage. After all, he was just a child and could be killed whenever he wanted. Before leaving, Ruthven told the unconscious Nui that he had high hopes for him, so he should remember his oath when the time came. When Nui woke up and saw Vanitas in front of him, he asked about his injury. Vanitas told him not to worry. Meanwhile, Jean was waiting for his return, wondering what had happened to him. Suddenly, she found Ruthven in front of her. She asked why he was there, and he explained he came after hearing about the commotion caused by a vampire in Montmartre, asking if she was the one who stirred things up. She told him she hadn't harmed anyone, she had only bitten a human with consent. He assured her there was no problem, suggesting that if her parents had witnessed it, they would be pleased, and then he took her with him. In the library, Oliver entered to find Roland and asked what he was doing sneaking around like that. Roland replied he was studying the history of humans and vampires, and that he hadn't touched any forbidden tomes. Moments later, Oliver stood with George, who seemed concerned about Roland's change and his interest in researching vampires. George reassured him that Roland would never harm the church. When Oliver later tried to threaten Roland, reminding him he was a hunter and that his deviation could put his brothers and family in danger, Roland flipped the table back at him, reminding him of his power and threatening him. Meanwhile, at Vanitas's and Nui's room, Dante suddenly crashed through their window, saying he received word that the monster Givaudan was alive and had reappeared as a huge wolf, with a crooked jaw, pointed ears, sharp claws, and a body covered in red fur, with black lines on its back. In the areas of Auvergne and Givaudan in the 18th century, over 100 women and children were torn apart by him, instilling fear in people. The humans and the church disagreed on what he was, but they all agreed that he was a curse-bearing vampire. Vanitas asked if he was sure it was the same monster from the 18th century. Dante admitted he wasn't sure, but 5 bodies had turned up this month, and the methods of killing varied between evisceration and decapitation, just like in the 18th century, and there were witnesses to the monster. Vanitas then said he would verify that information himself. In the meantime, Nui was completely unfocused in the conversation, having a strong desire to taste Vanitas's blood, claiming it smelled so good he already knew that, but couldn't understand why his thirst for Vanitas's blood was growing stronger now, as if his sense of smell was sharpening towards it. When Dante and Vanitas noticed Nui's distraction, they asked what was going on. Nui told Vanitas he wanted just one sip of his blood, but Vanitas warned him threateningly that he would kill him if he tried to drink his blood and see his memories. In the morning, Noe apologized to Vanitas, saying that part of him wanted to blame him for emitting a sweet scent near a vampire, but he couldn't deny that he wanted to look into his past. Vanitas asked him what he would gain from knowing his past, and Noe told him he found it interesting. Vanitas offered him a one-time deal, to lick the blood from his clothes the next time he got injured. They then headed to the train station to go to Givaudan, where Noe bumped into a girl, who apologized, and they boarded the train to start a new journey. They soon arrived at a place, and Noe asked Vanitas to wait, mentioning he saw a village that reminded him of Avaruani. Vanitas questioned his overwhelming joy, as Noe had been happily chattering since they got into the carriage. At that moment, Dante wondered about his condition, noting he looked like he was on the brink of death. Vanitas told him to shut up, explaining that his body was weak against the cold, unlike theirs, and asked what he and his informant were doing there. Noe replied that they had come for information to sell, and wouldn't cause any trouble. He quickly informed Vanitas that he was grateful for attacking the evil doctor who broke his aide's arm, as he was happy to take care of it. Vanitas whispered to Noe that they definitely came to gather information but doubted that was their only goal. So, he told him they would drop off their luggage at the inn and head to the forest where the bodies were found. They needed to track the monster before nightfall. The events that followed indicated that, in Givaudan, the monster mercilessly tore apart nearly 100 bodies, including children and women. Its mouth was deformed, its ears pointed, its claws sharp, and its body covered in red fur. It was said to resemble a wolf. While walking, someone wondered if the monster really existed in that forest. It was said that not only was the monster found there, but there was also a powerful witch. It was likely there was a connection between them, so Vanitas spoke, saying regardless of their relationship, as long as there was a monster carrying the curse, that was enough reason for him to come to Givaudan. Suddenly, they heard a sound, and Dante hid behind Johann. Noe said it must be the forest breeze, as he often played there. When he saw a walnut tree, he almost went to it, but Vanitas snapped at him, telling him not to get ahead. Noe replied that the walnuts were edible. A conversation took place between Vanitas and Dante about Noe, and suddenly they began to argue. Vanitas asked Johann to keep an eye on Noe because he would disappear the moment he wasn't paying attention. Then Noe's hat fell, so he went to look for it, causing his cat Moore to wander off, and everyone started searching for them. Suddenly, the forest turned to ice, and Vanitas began to lose his breath. At the same time, a group of the king's knights was searching for the monster to slay it and present its corpse to the king. Vanitas and the informant saw them, and recognized them as knights. In the 18th century, King Louis XV had tasked a battalion of knights with the monster case, and the first knight of the king was named Antoine. Suddenly, the monster appeared, and Dante panicked, saying no one told him it was so large. The king's knights began shooting at it, but it quickly dispatched all of them. Our heroes started to run through the forest. Vanitas said the guns were useless against it. It healed quickly. A monster with red eyes. The Witch of the Forest. 18th century events. Time travel. Vanitas repeated these phrases, wondering if they were living in the past. Just as the monster was about to attack him, Jean suddenly stepped in front of him. In front of Noe stood the same girl he had met at the Paris station, who introduced herself. To his surprise, she was a man named Astolfo, the 12th paladin, nicknamed the Agate. But Noe got angry because Astolfo had killed the king's knights, and quickly asked him why. Astolfo explained that he had always told them he wasn't a woman, but they insisted he was, and they fought him despite his warnings. Noe realized that he was also a hunter, like Roland, but wondered why he was different from him. Astolfo also realized that Noe was a vampire and began to fight him until he encountered Vanitas and Jean. When Jean jumped in front of the monster, Vanitas ordered her not to kill it, but she was speaking to the monster, calling it Chloe, as she had previously failed to kill it in Gévaudan. At that moment, Astolfo guessed that the monster was from Gévaudan, and speculated that Jean was a hellfire witch. He then rejoiced, saying it was a great day. Not only had he met the monster, but also the executor of Lord Ruthven. Meanwhile, Noe decided to fight him, but Vanitas opposed him, saying his wounds didn't allow him to take risks, and that the dwarf looked much stronger than Roland. He asked if Noe thought he would take it easy on him and allow him to speak like Roland, or if his feminine appearance had tricked him. On the other hand, Astolfo nervously wondered how Roland could be stronger than him. Vanitas soon ordered Noe to stop Jean from fighting the monster, because he couldn't allow any hunters or even executors to kill it. As long as it was a vampire with a curse, it would be saved. Meanwhile, Jean was fighting the monster, saying she knew it was Chloe. At the moment she was about to finish the monster off, she found herself in Noe's hands, pleading with her not to kill it, as she must have already known about Vanitas's ability to save cursed bearers, but she said she wouldn't allow that. She came as an executor to execute the cursed bearer, and if he decided to obstruct her mission, she would kill him too. While Vanitas mocked Astolfo about his strength, saying that hunters must be lacking strong fighters, which is why they assigned someone like him the paladin rank. He quickly called him Astolfo Granatum, ridiculing him, saying he heard there was a strong connection between the Granatum family and the church, meaning he must have begged his father a lot to become a paladin. Suddenly, he asked how much his father paid to buy him the paladin position. Astolfo then shouted at him to not mock his father. On the other side, the charlatan appeared with his procession, and Nina grabbed Noe's face, saying their meeting had been renewed once again. As the charlatan's parade started to play music, suddenly the monster disappeared. At that moment, Astolfo was about to finish off Jean, but Vanitas saved her, then took out his book to end the charlatan's play. Then a girl named Chloe appeared, sitting on the ground, being asked by someone to come back with him, telling him her leg was injured, and asking him to carry her. Events continued, and Vanitas appeared injured, prompting Jean to approach him. She mentioned he was poisoned, and needed her to suck the poison out, but he pushed her away, warning her not to touch him. He told her she should leave him and focus on her mission to capture the monster. Instead, Jean supported him and walked with him, remembering a nearby cabin. She soon led him there, laying him on the couch and saying she would light a fire. He grumbled about killing Astolfo next time. When Jean lit the fire, she said it would give them some warmth. Suddenly, she asked him to take off his clothes. He refused, so she started getting upset, explaining his wet clothes from the snow wouldn't let him warm up. She tried forcing him to remove them, insisting his life was in danger. However, she was shocked when she saw his body covered in scars. She attempted to remove his gloves, but he refused. After that, she apologized, asking if she was apologizing for his injury or the monster. She clarified she was sorry for both. Vanitas asked her who Chloe was, and if she knew the monster's identity. Jean explained her parents were disciples of Master Ruthven, and she had traveled with them and the master in her youth. Once, they left her in the care of the noble Dabchi at his castle in Gévaudan, where she met a vampire the noble was hiding, named Chloe Dabchi. He asked if she meant a vampire he had hidden, living among humans. She said Chloe didn't look old but had lived longer than Master Ruthven. Jean had learned a lot from her, besides studying and playing, and considered her like a big sister. Every day with Chloe was enjoyable. The day Jean had to leave the castle, she cried and didn't want to part with Chloe. Chloe asked her to come back and visit, but when they met again, Jean was an executor assigned to kill Chloe, as Chloe had become known as the monster. Executors were just tools that had to obey orders. However, Jean hesitated and couldn't bring herself to kill Chloe. One day, she asked Master Ruthven to let her kill Chloe if she herself was the monster that appeared. Now, she decided to kill Chloe once again, but this time she wouldn't fail. Vanitas responded, asking if she was serious, as she didn't seem to hate Chloe. Suddenly, he fainted. Jean realized he had a high fever and started looking for water. She heard him muttering the name Luna and wondered who that was. She quickly told him he needed to drink water. He tiredly asked if she was sure about helping him, him, since she wanted to kill the monster while he wanted to save it. Their conflicting goals made them enemies, and it might be in her interest to kill him now, but Jean disagreed, saying he had risked his life to protect her, so she couldn't kill him. He then told her that she and Noe were extremely naive. Jean asked him to focus on recovering if he wanted her to kill him. Events moved quickly, and Jean woke up searching for Vanitas. When she couldn't find him, she suddenly heard his voice talking with Johan about Noe. Both were determined to protect Noe from harm. She then exclaimed, "So, Vanitas is better." He was able to get up, and Jean remembered taking care of him, feeling quite embarrassed. She started hitting her head against the wall, blaming herself for being so bold in talking to him. She justified it by saying she was the reason he got poisoned. All she wanted was to save his life. No more, no less, and she couldn't have feelings for him in her heart. Yet, her curiosity about the panic on his face as she approached was overwhelming her. She also noticed a hint of calmness in his eyes, which she found incredibly charming. Soon, she told herself this was the perfect opportunity. He was now in her control, and from that day on, things would change. Moments later, she went out to him and greeted him with a morning salutation. He asked her why she seemed so flustered, and she was surprised he was acting so cool, as if he didn't remember how she had cared for him the day before. When Jean noticed Johan was around, she asked him if he was human. He guessed he was a vampire and added that his mood was a bit off because he lost his partner. Suddenly, Dante appeared, skating on ice, calling for him, and Johan jumped at him, unbelieving, asking how he would face Richie if something bad happened. Vanitas praised him for finding their location and said he only followed the smoke. Johan then asked about the fool Noe, and Dante said he believed the Silver Witch took him. After Vanitas threw his book into the sky, Chloe saw it, grabbed the book and Noe, and left. He tried to follow her but couldn't. At that point, Vanitas said Noe was too resilient for anyone to easily take him down, but he was worried about the book. In some cave, Astolfo sat alone when Marco suddenly showed up, put a coat on him, and scolded him for going off alone. Astolfo didn't care to respond. When he turned to leave the cave, Marco asked where he was going. Astolfo told him he was foolish, and reminded him of why he came to that place, saying they needed to head to the witch's castle while Vanitas and his friends decided to follow the witch. Vanitas raised his weapon at Dante and ordered him to give him all the information he was hiding, claiming he paid a lot to get all the information about Gotoubun. He threatened that if he discovered he was hiding even one piece of information, he would kill him. Then he asked why he and the vampires in the church were pursuing the monster. Johan threatened Dante, saying that if he harmed him in any way, he would kill him. Vanitas told him to try and kill him then. Dante replied that he would tell everything soon, and quickly asked Jean if she thought the witch Dante mentioned was the same Chloe she knew. She said she probably was, and he asked her where she thought they took Noe, requesting she guide them there, as their goals might differ, but the story Dante told must interest her. Dante then asked Jean about her relationship with Chloe. Vanitas asked him to be quiet and follow him, as time was running out. Meanwhile, Noe woke up and found himself sleeping in Chloe's bed, who had drained his blood. He told her that draining blood without permission was against the law, but she didn't care about his words and said she wanted another dose. He reminded her that this was illegal, and she told him he was a noisy child. He tried to move, but she restrained him. When she pounced on him, someone stopped her and told her it wasn't good to drink someone's blood against their will. Though Noe was thankful to him for saving him, it was Jean-Jacques who wanted to strangle him because Chloe had drunk his blood, and he was very jealous. He then asked her which blood she preferred, his or Noe's. She told him his blood was more delicious. Then Jacques threw Noe some clothes and told him to put them on and come downstairs. He introduced him to his cat, Moore. When Noe remembered Jean calling the monster Chloe, he guessed that this vampire was the same monster and hoped Vanitas and the others were okay. He decided to listen to Chloe for now, then went downstairs, where he found her sitting at a table surrounded by musical instruments that played but resembled automata. She introduced him to the shadow figure, saying she found Noe in the snowstorm, so she brought him. Soon, Noe saw the shadow figure hugging Chloe, called him Ninya, and asked him to stay away from her. Chloe was surprised and asked the shadow if that was his name, but he told her they called him that themselves. She asked Noe to sit down and have a meal, while he internally lamented that this shadow had stolen his childhood friend Louis from him. He asked Chloe if she was the same as the Gotoubun monster, as rumors said the monster was a cursed vampire. If that was true, then Ninya must have taken away her real name, but still, he saw her sitting next to him, smiling. She told him she willingly became cursed, and the shadow claimed this was true. There were many names he wished to steal, but he couldn't steal the names of vampires as powerful as Chloe. So he offered to fulfill their wishes if they gave him their real names. They were just like him because he had tried to get his real name several times and failed. Noe suddenly lashed out, asking who he was and why he was stealing names, and whether he stole Louis's name in the same way. Then he started to attack in anger, demanding him to return Louis. Suddenly, Chloe knocked him to the ground for causing a scene, saying she hated those who wasted food. Noe then woke up, and Jacques scolded him, him, saying that Chloe becomes scary when she's angry. When he asked about her, Jacques told him she was with the shadow figure and that it was better to avoid her for a while. Noe objected, saying that leaving her alone with the shadow was very dangerous. Soon after, Jacques placed food in front of him. He tasted it and asked if he had prepared it and dried his clothes too. Jacques confirmed this and he told him he was amazing and thanked him for saving him and more. Then he extended his hand, introducing himself again, and apologized for being rude. Jacques was surprised, saying that no one had ever asked to shake his hand before. Meanwhile, Vanitas was asking Dante how much he knew about the Dabchi's family. He answered he didn't know anything beyond what was in the file, that the family had vanished after the Gotoubun monster incident. Despite the church forbidding research on the universal formula, the family violated those rules and conducted research, producing a device to distort the universal formula, which led to the appearance of the Gotoubun monster. Vanitas concluded that the reason humans and vampires were intervening was to resolve the monster issue. He then quickly asked Dante under whose orders they were acting, and he said it was by order of Sir Francis Varney, known as Marquis Macan, who also tasked him with getting involved in this case to verify the existence of the device and bring it with him if possible. On the other side, Jacques was showing Noe pictures of the Dabchi's family, the last head of the family being Herman Dabchis, with his wife, children, and siblings all dead except for Chloe, the only survivor. Then Noe asked him how long Chloe had been there, and he told him she had been there for a long time caring for the Dabchi's descendants for ages. Jacques quickly asked him why they came to the forest and if they were enemies of Chloe. Noe confirmed that his enemy was Ninia, and Jacques told him he noticed he wanted to keep him away from Chloe, reaffirming that he would harm her as they didn't know what he would do to her, and his companions could restore Chloe's real name. Meanwhile, the Shadow was asking Chloe if she was sure about leaving Noe alone with Jacques. She told him she wanted Jacques to have a friend or two. At that moment, Jacques confessed to Noe that Chloe cried alone every night until the Shadow showed up in her life. She gave him her name willingly, so he would support her even if their fate was extinction. The events suggested that the scars from Babel began to heal in the latter half of the 16th century. Chloe's father had warned her not to reveal her true nature as a vampire. However, she suddenly awoke to discover she had become a vampire due to the influence of the universal formula. He promised to turn her back into a human, and after she turned 11, her body stopped aging. They told the public she died of an illness, and since then, she lived as a hidden vampire of the Dabchi's family, residing in a castle deep within the mountains. Her father hired witches and alchemists to study the formula. Soon after, her father passed away, and she met Ruthven, who introduced himself as August. He was the first vampire she encountered, and he told her that if they could rewrite and distort the universal formula, they could change the world. From then on, the mountains and the castle of Gotoubun became her world. She knew nothing of the outside until he told her that vampires were in trouble, hunted by the church, who saw them as abominable beings deserving of extermination. When she asked which side he was on, humans or vampires, replied that he loved both equally and wanted to end the conflict between them. After that, he brought Jean to her one day, and she got to know her. She stayed with her until Jean left the castle, and Chloe tried to stop her, saying they shouldn't go out. But Jean said she saw something beautiful from the window and wanted to see it up close. Suddenly, Jean ran, and Chloe chased after her, finding herself in a place surrounded by flowers and a blue sky. It was a breathtaking view she had never seen before. Then Jean bid her farewell, leaving with Ruthven, and Chloe worried about her dearly as she never heard from her again until one day Ruthven came to her, injured in his eye, and admitted he had been wrong in his ideas and needed to correct that. So he needed the Dabchi's family's research. He attacked her and demanded she vow to use all her research according to his orders, but she threw him away because the elders of the Dabchi's family had placed their hopes in this research. At that moment, she lost her first friend until she received a message from someone claiming to be Ruthven's friend. She learned that the war between vampires and humans reached its peak, and Ruthven was the main factor for peace, doing everything he could to reach the position of senator. She continued her research for decades, and one day while lying amidst the flowers, she wondered if Jean was okay. Then she told herself she must complete the device for distorting the formula. Suddenly, she fell asleep and heard a voice telling her that she shouldn't have learned about the outside world or the blue sky, as that way she became alone. Quickly, she woke up to find someone talking to his companion, saying he heard about a little girl named Jean being killed by a monster. She said what she saw was a nightmare. Then the shadow came to her, asking about her wish. In the present, Chloe placed her hand on something, causing a huge light that Jean saw, and she wondered what it was, and Vanitas told her she had pinpointed her location. The events unfolded quickly, and our heroes witnessed the king's knights discussing the monster and presenting its corpse to the king. Dante was confused, remarking that they had seen the monster slaughter everyone the day before, so what was happening now? At that moment, Vanitas realized they were trapped in a time loop created by the curse bearer. Meanwhile, Jean thought of Chloe and quickly put on her gloves but was surprised to find Vanitas on her back. She asked him to get off because she was heading to Chloe's castle to eliminate the monster, but he refused, saying he was there to save her. She told him she couldn't cause trouble for Luca or Master Ruthven before pushing him away. At Nui's place, he felt a disturbance and suddenly sensed something was off, so he asked Jack if he had put something in his food, but Jack pushed him into the room and told him he would end up being his killer if he got in Chloe's way again, so he needed to sleep. After that, Jack cut himself and approached Nui, saying he had heard from Chloe that one could see others' memories by drinking their blood. This sparked an idea in his mind. To be remembered by someone, he made Nui drink his blood, and Nui saw a small child being beaten in a tavern. The scene then shifted to the same child crying in a forest surrounded by ice until he saw Chloe. He asked her if she was the silver witch he'd heard stories about from his grandfather, and thus, they both realized the other was a vampire. The scene changed, and a group of people appeared, talking about a new victim. They mentioned that Marquis Dubois had been involved in suspicious research for a long time, and the silver witch appeared in the forest as a result of his research, possibly making her the monster itself. But Jack then told them that she was not the monster. She was trying to protect everyone by investigating its identity. On the other side, Chloe had told Jack that the monster killed the Marquis, and his wife committed suicide, all because of her. The Dubois family faded away because of her protection, and they branded her as the monster. At that moment, Jack embraced her, reassuring her that he would stay with her until the end of time. People then recalled that the hunters and executioners had come to kill the monster. Its end had come, and the people stirred, cheering to kill it. But at that moment, Jack decided he needed to become stronger to save Chloe. Nui returned to reality, realizing that the Jeffadan monster was Jack, who was telling the shadow that he hated the humans who despised Chloe and the vampires who abandoned her, and that he would devour them all. The events moved quickly, and Jack told Chloe to flee because the Hellfire Witch was targeting her. But in the midst of a storm, Jean suddenly appeared, shocking Chloe at the sight of her. Chloe realized she was the Flame Witch, and said that she had finally returned for her, starting to urge her to hurry and use her claws, fangs, and flames to kill her. Quickly, Chloe threw herself off a mountain peak, but the shadow swiftly caught her, asking if she was sure about doing this since she had committed no sin, yet everyone had abandoned her, urging her to take revenge on Jeffadan. The events unfolded quickly, and Chloe was seen standing in front of some machine. Moments later, Nui appeared in a pitiful state before Vanitas, beginning to ask if he was real. Vanitas asked him if he had taken any drugs, and quickly asked if he had garnered any information from his stay at the castle. Nui revealed that the monster was not Chloe but Jean Jack, and that Chloe was a vampire willingly bearing a curse, though he had not seen them kill anyone. At that point, Vanitas said that as long as she carried the curse willingly, there was no need to treat her, as her goal was revenge. However, Nui opposed him and tried to convince him to treat her. Vanitas remembered he needed to retrieve the book first, so he asked Nui to say something that would convince him to treat them. He mentioned that Jack had become a monster to protect Chloe, stating that the land of Jeffadan was still filled with superstitions, inhabited by many religious sects that despised vampires and believed they deserved to be hunted. After the war, hunting vampires was no longer allowed, creating a need for an excuse to hunt them. They fabricated a ferocious monster from scratch to consume the purged bodies of the church. At that time, the bishop announced that the monster belonged to God, that the church had created the monster and was behind the killings in Jeffadan. Suddenly, Astolfo and Marco appeared, and Nui asked Vanitas to go ahead, promising he would follow. On another side, Jean was fighting the monster while Vanitas approached Chloe, saying she was using the keyboard to control multiple machines at once. She asked him who he was, and he told her he was a specialist in treating vampires and had come to save her, so she needed to return his book without any issues. She told him she was curious about the gem embedded in the cover but failed to remove it, so she threw the book away, prompting Vanitas to shout. She then asked him if he was an ally or an enemy. The shadow told her that he was her enemy, and that he hated her fiercely. She asked him to deal with him, so he began to attack while she started rewriting the formulas on the transmutation machine. Vanitas asked her what she was trying to do again. The shadow replied that she was going to erase Jeffadan from the map of the world perfectly, and create a genocide against humans, animals, the forest, the mountains, and everything. Vanitas warned her against activating the machine, but she pressed the button, transforming the black shadow into a physical form, finally saying, "I am now capable of killing him." Chloe mentioned that her father had told her it was the duty of the noble class to protect the people, and as a member of the Dubois family, she took pride in that. No matter how much the villagers hated her and wanted her dead, she couldn't bring herself to hate them because she loved them. Her love was a responsibility that came with bearing the name Dubois. However, she couldn't forgive the shadow for tarnishing the name of the real Jean Jack. She would never forgive him. At Astolfo's place, Marco was telling him that he sensed a massive energy in the area, likely from a transmutation machine being used. Astolfo quickly rushed off, saying something was happening at the castle, and Nui followed him. When Nui arrived at the castle, he was shocked to see Vanitas sitting weakly on the ground while Chloe had the shadow by the neck, chaos erupting around them. Chloe told the shadow that killing him was harder than she thought. Vanitas interrupted, urging her to stop provoking the shadow and to release his physical form immediately. He warned her that if the shadow remembered his real life, she wouldn't be able to kill him. At Luca's place, he was talking to his brother, who was trying to calm him down. Even though they had destroyed the body, some parts still remained. Suddenly, Suddenly, the scene shifted, and everyone was stunned as the transmutation machine emitted a red light. Astolfo felt nauseous at the sight, and even Chloe's body began to tremble, refusing to confront the being in front of her. The shadow then transformed into a strange woman who began approaching Chloe, sucking her blood. Nui tried to save her, but Vanitas stopped him, revealing that the woman was Ninia, the 100-year death, the first Crimson Moon vampire and Queen Faustina. Nui exclaimed in shock, "Your Majesty, the Queen." Vanitas explained that they were in trouble because her disease had been triggered against her will, and she would soon erupt. In an instant, the monster broke through the castle walls and fell to the ground. Chloe screamed, "Jack!" and Jean appeared from behind him as the castle began to collapse. Vanitas realized the machine had stopped working, and Ninia would return to her shadow form. True to his words, Ninia transformed back, stating she needed names, and Vanitas accidentally slipped, falling from a high place. Nui ran after him, reaching out to help, but a voice told him it was pointless to save Vanitas, saying he always lost people and things no matter how much he reached out. Nui ignored the voice and followed Vanitas. He then questioned what he was seeing and who the voice was. He found several people questioning the destruction of their village, and realized they were the residents of Sugi village. He complained about Ninia's fading, which caused chaos and showed him terrible memories. Vanitas explained that Chloe Dubois' disaster had created a space for her protection, and if her disaster spiraled out of control, it would expand that space, pulling everything within her capacity. He feared she would consume all of Jeffadan's population if they didn't act quickly. Nui angrily asked Vanitas why he hadn't told him sooner. Vanitas replied that he had only just confirmed the details and didn't want to act recklessly. He told Vanitas that if he had known earlier, things would be different, but Vanitas insisted he wouldn't have believed him, as vampires don't listen to humans. Vanitas quickly reminded Noi that he had nearly been killed by many vampires, including Ruthven. Wolves suddenly surrounded them from all directions, and as Nui struggled to decide what to do, Roland dropped down in front of them, saying, just as expected, they'd met again so soon. After dealing with the wolves, they noticed Orca above, and Roland remarked that they'd be in trouble if they were found. Vanitas then began analyzing the situation, realizing they had somehow ended up on the path to Sugi village as the mountains crumbled around them. The wolves appeared, and Nui wondered if the Jeffadan monster was to blame. Internally, Nui questioned whether Roland had come to capture the monster. Roland began explaining that their presence confirmed that a cursed vampire was involved in the case, and he wanted them to guide him toward the most peaceful solution. Vanitas told him that if he truly wanted to help, he needed to ensure the people of Jeffadan didn't die, as Chloe's duty as a member of the Dubois family was to protect her people. Even if she killed someone from Jeffadan during her frenzy, she would never forgive herself. He quickly asked if Roland could guarantee that. Roland reassured him to leave it to him, but added that, as a Bladden-ranked hunter, if things took a turn for the worse, he wouldn't hesitate to behead vampires. Roland then quickly moved to help Oliver fight off the wolves, asking for his permission, but Oliver initially refused without even hearing Roland out. Roland ignored his refusal and told him he wanted Oliver to join a rescue mission for 30 minutes. Oliver reminded him that he had already declined, and Roland countered that they weren't at war and that killing innocent vampires would lead to serious consequences. He hinted that the church was covering something up and wanted to speak to the curse-bearer without killing them. Suddenly, a strange being appeared, and Roland instructed George and Maria to handle rescuing the people, emphasizing that he didn't want anyone to die. He and Oliver would deal with the being. He exclaimed excitedly that it had been a long time since he'd fought alongside Oliver. Elsewhere, Jean stood before a dark entity and asked, "Where are you? Who are you?" It replied that she was merely a puppet or an instrument, and the vessel shouldn't think or desire anything. If she disobeyed any orders, her neck would be severed. She repeated after it, "I am just a puppet, nothing but a tool." The scene shifted, and Bladden found a small girl, asking if she was okay. Then Jan appeared, standing in front of Ruthven, who told her that from now on she would be under his protection and that he wanted her to learn a lot from him. After that, she saw her parents burning, and Ruthven told her they had betrayed the vampires, leading to the deaths of many. Since children must atone for their parents' sins, she was no longer a vampire. She had become an executioner, thinking of nothing and wanting nothing. The events moved quickly, and Jan appeared, saying she was an executor and had to follow orders. The scene repeated, and Chloe urged her to hurry, using her claws and fangs, as time was running out. Later, Jan appeared sleeping on a bed, covered by a black shadow. She suddenly found herself on the ground, facing Ruthven, who reminded her not to forget her oath. He said she would fall into a deep sleep until the war ended and everyone lived in peace, and she should use this time to heal her mental and emotional wounds. The scene changed again, and Jan said she had forgotten the oath because of the long dream, but this time she had to kill Chloe without fail. A voice told her that Chloe was not the monster, but she ignored that truth because Ruthven had ordered her to kill Chloe and put an end to the Gevdan case. She was also a bearer of a curse, and it was the executor's job to sever the heads of raging curse bearers. It was too late to save her. her. At that moment, Vanitas appeared and told her that there was still time. He told her they could save Chloe and asked for her help, promising that Chloe hadn't killed anyone in Gevden. She was falsely accused. He asked if she truly wanted to kill Chloe, and she replied that she shouldn't want or wish for anything. When he asked why, she explained that disobeying orders would mean killing an innocent person and that person could be him. He assured her he wouldn't die before granting her wish, no matter what it was. She begged him to save her, and Chloe, tears streaming down her face. He gently stroked her hair and comforted her. Meanwhile, Noi tried to rouse Jack, but Vanitas pushed him away and slapped Jack's face to wake him faster. Noi warned him to be careful since Jack was hurt. Jack soon came to, shocked to hear from Vanitas that Chloe's revenge plan had failed, and that he needed Jack's help to return his book if he wanted to save her. On the other side, Astolfo lay unconscious, recovering his memories. A voice told him that his ancestors had risked their lives fighting vampires to protect the people of the state. It was his duty as a descendant of the Grenadum family to sever the necks of vampires if they threatened humans. The scene shifted, and Astolfo was crying in a woman's lap. She comforted him, saying he didn't have to kill anyone if he didn't want to. She told him that fearing to hurt others wasn't cowardice, showed he had a compassionate heart. She urged him not to abandon his mercy. The scene changed again, and Astolfo was with a little girl who called him brother. Before them stood a vampire. Astolfo was terrified and said they needed to call an adult. The girl told him the vampire was hurt, softening his heart. He promised not to tell anyone and fetched a first aid kit to help. The vampire asked why he was helping, and Astolfo replied that it was good to lend a hand. The girl sat beside him and cast a spell to ease the vampire's pain. The vampire then recognized them. Days passed, and Marco called out for Astolfo and his sister every day, wondering where they were. Astolfo and the vampire became close friends, and the vampire asked him to share everything about his family. One night, the vampire killed Astolfo's entire family. He thanked Astolfo for being kind, and told him that his parents and sister had been killed by a Bladen hunter. He asked how Astolfo felt now that his family was gone too. Astolfo woke up screaming but was quickly sedated. Meanwhile, Dante and Johann encountered Vanitas, who was searching for his book on the second floor, 6th shelf. He urged them to find it before they were trapped in Chloe's closed world forever. Vanitas then asked Jack to help him save Chloe by operating a machine to alter the formula, but it wouldn't start. Vanitas asked about the machine's main engine, and Jack mentioned it was called the Divine Tear Stone. Vanitas later asked someone about a stone made of astromite, confirming it was the Divine Tear. He revealed his gloved hand to activate the machine, but chaos erupted due to Chloe and Jan. At that moment, Jack felt a pang of sympathy for what was happening to Chloe, and Vanitas told him he could see in her eyes that she had decided to take her own life after achieving her revenge. Noi urged Jack to talk to her and make her reconsider, but just then, Astolfo stabbed Jack from behind with his spear, and Jack fell to the ground as Astolfo shouted that he would kill all vampires. On the other side, Roland and Oliver were battling the beast, and Roland was amazed, saying there was no point in cutting off the monster's heads or tearing it apart. Oliver told him that if the situation worsened, he should not hesitate to cut off the heads of the curse bearers, as they would be powerless to save anyone. While Vanitas was trying to restart the machine, the fight between Noi and Astolfo escalated, while Jack, injured and in pain, began to remember Chloe asking him if he wanted to save Noi. She had told him she understood that he wanted a friend once everything was over, and he realized she had never talked to him about her future, which he had feared to ask her about. He then remembered that she had made machines and named them after the Dabshi family. He asked her why she created them for them when he was protecting her, and she told him they were substitutes for the Dabshi family seeking revenge and would support her. Coming back from his memories, he said he now understood how she felt. She blamed herself for the extinction of her family and decided to follow them after achieving her revenge, so she would make those machines kill her in revenge for them. At that moment, Vanitas restarted the machine, and Dante threw him the book. At the same instant, Jack shouted at Chloe, telling her she was foolish, as everyone hunters, executors, even the people had come to kill her, and she still wanted to free him from her world and leave him alone. He then approached her, saying he would go with her wherever she went, and he cried and hugged her so she wouldn't leave him. When Vanitas began treating Chloe, he remembered that if the curse bearer did not wish to separate himself from the closed world he had created, there was no solution other than to erase them both. He shouted at Chloe, telling her she had to choose, either fade away with this world or survive and endure humiliation, knowing she would never regain her honor, as the church would not acknowledge the truth, and she would remain a target for hunting as a monster. But she had to make her choice herself. Just moments before that, Noi had told Roland that he might have to fight one of his companions, referring to Astolfo, and Roland warned him to be careful, as Astolfo had been a really nice boy until his parents were killed by a vampire. The events returned to the present moment, where Astolfo began to bleed during his fight with Noi, and Marco told him to stop because he couldn't continue, as he seemed affected by the excess doses to increase his strength. Moments later, Astolfo cut off Noi's hand, but Noi punched him, saying he would save Chloe and Jack no matter what. With Chloe, while Vanitas was trying to save her, she was regaining her memories. She had always wanted to go back to being human, as that was her father's wish, who dedicated his life to finding a way to turn her back into a human. But that never happened, so she wanted everyone to accept her as she was. At that moment, Vanitas was calling out her real name, Luna, and he quickly told Chloe that her real name was Carnus, therefore she was the snow crystal player. The scene changed, the snow in the forest disappeared, taking the monster with it, and Roland rejoiced, saying his companions had done well. While Noi was suffering from the severed hand, Dante was rushing toward him, saying he found his hand and asking if they could reattach it, and Noi told him he wasn't sure if that would work. Soon, he noticed the asterisk flowers around him, wondering where they came from, and Dante told him they appear in areas where the world's formula was distorted. Suddenly, Astolfo stood before Noi, saying he would kill all vampires, but Roland blocked his way, and Astolfo collapsed, remembering his family, and saying he was the culprit and to blame. Roland hugged him, saying everything was over. With Chloe, Jack was checking on her, but she hid him because of the many wounds on his face, and then they began to argue. He asked her how she could decide to die without telling him, and when they both calmed down and decided to live together, she remembered Jan, and wondered where he was. She quickly found him and thanked him for saving Chloe. Vanitas told her that even so, he didn't believe the council would leave Chloe free. She could face some kind of punishment, and she assured him she knew that. Events unfolded quickly, and Jack asked Vanitas to take his power away as long as it was going to hurt Chloe. So, Vanitas opened his book and began to grant his wish, and at that moment, the Gevdan monster disappeared. The scene shifted quickly, and Noe went to Orlok asking for help because Vanitas was on the verge of dying. He explained that Vanitas had been bedridden for 10 days since their return to Paris. Every time he asked about his illness, Vanitas would say his heart hurt for a reason he didn't know. Vanitas kept refusing to eat, so Noe came to ask for their help. At that moment, Vanitas shouted that he wouldn't let anyone examine his body, claiming he had read all the medical books and found no solution to his ailment. He believed it had to be a curse cast upon him by Jean. Everyone was stunned, but he explained that he had lost blood in Gévaudan, and after that, the symptoms appeared. He immediately felt heat in his face and a racing heartbeat, and worse, Jean's features wouldn't leave his mind. What had happened to his body? She must have done something to him. Maybe her fangs were poisoned, and she cast a curse on him. At that moment, Orlok's assistants threw Vanitas and Noe out of the office. Noe kept knocking on the door, asking to be let back in, but they refused. Events unfolded quickly, and a man walked past Vanitas, telling his girlfriend that he felt the same symptoms Vanitas was experiencing. Vanitas was shocked upon hearing this. Vanitas then went to meet Roland, who was sitting with his companion Olivier, and quickly joined them for coffee. He asked Roland about his experience in romantic relationships, but Roland told him Olivier was more experienced in such matters. Vanitas explained that he had a friend who recently couldn't get a certain girl out of his mind, and his chest felt tight, leading to insomnia at night. They asked him some questions, and he told them he initially flirted with her, but began to see different sides of her, and became attracted to her, and his feelings changed. Roland said, "It's love." Vanitas was shocked and wondered how to cure himself of this disease. He was used to pain, but this was different. He couldn't bear this pain. Roland then cheered up, saying he forgot it was about his friend. At that moment, Noe was eavesdropping on Vanitas's discussion with Roland and quickly followed him. Meanwhile, Jean was apologizing to Luca for the mess she had caused, telling him she understood, as she acted on her uncle's orders. He then asked her to tell him what happened in Gévaudan, as he was glad she didn't kill her companion. When he asked about her whereabouts, she told him she didn't know, as she left Vanitas to handle everything and took off. They continued talking, and she told him that since her return to Paris, she couldn't get Vanitas out of her mind, and she no longer felt disgusted by him. Then Luca shouted that she seemed to have fallen in love with him. He then asked Dominique to save Jean, and she questioned him about what was wrong with her. When Dominique learned what happened, she began to ask her some questions. When Jean answered no to all of them, Dominique was shocked, asking, "How did this happen?" Jean told her that Vanitas had saved her a lot, so he was a good person. Dominique tried to remind her of her goal regarding Vanitas, but she failed. The events shifted to Vanitas, who was telling Noe that since their trip to Gévaudan, there had been many incidents involving vampires. He questioned if Noe thought they were caused by the curse bearers. Noe replied that he didn't know. Noe confessed that he had met a human who hated vampires deeply, so he also hated them. He hadn't lost in a fight against one and had no regrets about battling, but he thought, what set his path apart from Astolfo's? The reason must have been a blue moon vampire. The scene changed, and Dominique appeared, along with a small child who was scolding her for not bringing Noe to him. If she hadn't done so, he'd have to manipulate and lure her. The events unfolded rapidly, and Amelia went to Noe to deliver a message intended for him. When he opened it, a memory from the past resurfaced, a scene where his teacher introduced him to his grandchildren, Louis and Dominique. Then, all the events involving Louis and Mina came rushing back until he grew exhausted, and afterward, he remained in bed, with Dominique beside him, crying. She wept because if she hadn't spoken to him about Mina, he wouldn't have witnessed Louis's beheading and endured such suffering. Soon, Veronica arrived and said to Dominique, "It's been a long time since you've seen her." So she came for her. When Dominique asked her to leave with her, she refused, saying Noe had been harmed because of her, and she wouldn't abandon him. Dominique was soon puzzled that Veronica showed no sorrow for Louis, to which Veronica replied that she should have killed him at birth because he was her twin, and it was rumored that twins drain more life. If the Desade family had discovered this, their name would have been tarnished. Dominique was astonished, saying she had always known Louis was a year older than her, which was why he was hidden. But Veronica reassured her that the family had to choose one to kill, so their grandfather took him first to test something, and their parents didn't object. Dominique then asked why they chose her to stay, and Veronica told her she didn't know. Perhaps it was their grandfather's whim. After Veronica left, Noe briefly awoke and embraced Dominique, calling her Louis, and mentioning he had dreamed of Louis's death. The scene shifted quickly, and Dominique cut her hair, saying Noe wished Louis could live instead of her. The events moved swiftly, and Dominique appeared in the present, standing before Dante, who asked her why she was watching the Flame Witch. Then a boy appeared before her, introducing himself as Michael. The events then reverted to the past, where Dominique apologized to Noe, hoping she would be the one to carry the curse. The scene changed to Vanitas sitting with Dante when Amelia entered, saying Noe was in trouble and showing him the signature on the message that had arrived for Noe, which made Michael repeat, "So, he's alive." On the other side, Luca was informed that Dominique was missing, as she hadn't returned to the castle for a long time. Luca was puzzled that she hadn't neglected her duty as a royal guard and asked for Jean's help. At Michael's place, he realized that Noe didn't know anything about Vanitas, so he offered to let Noe drink his blood first to learn about Vanitas through him. The events returned to the past. After cutting her hair, Noe broke down, vowing to protect her, even at the cost of his life. In the present, Noe drank Michael's blood and saw the two talk about a surviving child whose mother was a prostitute but dressed him in feminine clothing, and it seemed she was displaying him for customers. There, he met Roland, and Michael began to ask him, why did the vampire kill? He replied that he killed his mother, but Michael insisted he expelled the devil inside his mother. Soon, Olivier took Roland away because he was injured, leaving Michael alone, eventually finding himself in Moro's lab. There, Michael met Vanitas, who told him he would now be known as 71, as they were test subjects for Moro. Moro soon began his experiments on children, but moments later, he was informed by his assistant that the child was too small and wouldn't survive. He called for the next child, as he was close to achieving his goal. When it was Michael's turn, he cried out to Vanitas for help, and Vanitas asked Moro to use him instead of Michael. The events unfolded, and Moro said his experiment was finally nearing completion. He spoke about Vanitas's books, and when Vanitas asked him about them, he explained that they were two extraordinary books created by the legendary Blue Moon vampire, which operated using astromite containing magic, chemistry, and various techniques. Using them could easily distort universal formulas, but he couldn't open them no matter how hard he tried, as only the descendants of the Blue Moon vampire could. Thus, he decided to turn them into something resembling the descendants of the Blue Moon vampire, saying he had always injected them with Blue Moon vampire blood. When Vanitas was stunned, Moro told him he possessed Vanitas's books and two children, making him lucky. Then Moro put them on his devices, stating that when activating that machine, they would experience a shock that could drive them insane. Shortly, the whole place collapsed, and when they regained consciousness, they found the area in utter chaos, and there was someone pleading with Michael to take them with him. Somewhere, a woman was telling Vanitas that the hunters wouldn't pursue them, as Moro's research was forbidden, so the church would try to cover up the damages instead of chasing them. It was highly likely that most of the researchers there were killed. At that moment, the children thought they were facing a woman but were shocked to find themselves before the Blue Moon vampire, who told them that those around called him Vanitas or Luna. Vanitas tried to attack the vampire, but his attack was countered, as the vampire said he aimed directly at his eye because he was trained by the hunters. Vanitas then asked him if he saved them to regain the blood that was in their bodies, but the vampire told him he saved them because they asked for help. Vanitas lost consciousness after that and woke up in some house, where the vampire told him he belonged to his human friend, but he didn't believe him. The vampire explained that chemists and sorcerers are more aligned with vampires than the church. They continued to talk, and Vanitas mentioned that his father was a doctor from a prestigious family, but abandoned his family after meeting his mother, who was a traveling circus performer in the country. She died during childbirth, and he believed his father hated him for that, but his father died defending him against a vampire attack. That's why he wanted to be a hunter and wipe out all vampires. When Moro experimented on them, he felt they deserved the pain they endured, but he later realized that humans are monsters too. The vampire then asked him why he didn't run away, to which Vanitas replied that Moro killed someone and deceived the hunters by saying he was the one who died, warning that if he disappeared, another child would come, so he didn't escape. In the morning, the vampire offered them breakfast with milk and herb soup, but Vanitas criticized the black color of the milk, as well as the color of the soup and the room, which was filled with rats, prompting the vampire to suggest Vanitas cook instead. After some time, the vampire told told them they might die at any moment because Moro's experiments had destabilized their bodies, making them unstable and likely to collapse due to contradicting nature. He offered to take them with him to find a way to save them. One day, he mentioned that there was a way to save them by bringing them into his clan. Mikhail agreed, but Vanitas refused, determined to remain human to the end. Presently, Vanitas encountered Mikhail and threw Noi to the ground. At that moment, Vanitas asked Mikhail what he had done to Noi, and Mikhail responded by asking if he was worried about him. He had only given him some of his blood because he didn't know anything about him, so he wanted to show him a glimpse of his past through him. Vanitas spoke, guessing that he didn't remember anything from that day, nor did he recall the reason he killed Luna, the Blue Moon vampire. Mikhail asked, "Wasn't it obvious that he should know the truth about what happened?" His memory was foggy, and he didn't remember much, but he came to bring him back too, knowing he thought he had perished. He lived through the bitter pain, and a kind person saved him, and told him there was a way to bring their father back, so they could live together again. Therefore, he came asking him to forget his revenge and return with him. At that, Vanitas blew up and began firing randomly, asking Mikhail if he understood how much suffering he endured to destroy his existence. Noi stood in front of the bullets, asking him not to hurt Mikhail because he had taken Dominic hostage, and it seemed he had done something to her using the book. The vampire told him he didn't care about Dominic. Noi then knelt before him and begged him to tell him what happened that day. He knew it was a selfish request, but he needed to do what Mikhail asked of him. When Noi started to approach him casually, Vanitas shot beside his feet and warned him not to block his way. As he meant nothing to him, they were just two companions sharing interests. Once their interests ended, he could ditch him. Noi replied that he didn't care about what he said. He only wanted to protect Dominic at any cost, enough that he failed to protect Luis. At that moment, they learned from Mikhail that it was he who beheaded Luis, Dominic's brother, and it was also his fault that Dominic cut her hair and believed that Noi wished for her death instead of her brother's. Vanitas then said he didn't care about anything being said and would kill anyone who tried to drink his blood, possibly even kill Dominic first, thus freeing Noi from her constant whining so she wouldn't bother him. Moments later, Vanitas stood facing Noi, and Mikhail watched their fight with enjoyment, especially since Vanitas insisted on killing anyone who tried to take his memories, even Noi himself. Meanwhile, Johan was asking Dante what happened to him. Dante told him that Vanitas hit him and took his gun. Amelia mentioned she suspected something bad had happened to Dominic, prompting Noi to leave immediately, deciding she should tell Vanitas. Dante wished that Vanitas wouldn't have to fight, as the look on his face wasn't reassuring. On the other side, Noi was amazed at Vanitas' ability to read all of his moves. He couldn't defeat him despite his strength. While they fought, Vanitas nearly killed Noi but softened his blow at the last moment. Noi realized that Mikhail had deceived him when he said he didn't know anything about him. Vanitas had always acted like this, never telling him anything but doing things as they should. Therefore, he yelled at him, asking why he denied everything they had been through together. On the other side, Dominic jumped from a high place, saying she could do it as long as it would save Noi from harm. At the moment Noi saw her and tried to save her, Jan was quicker and caught her before she hit the ground. Suddenly, Dominic pushed Jan away, saying she hated her. This surprised Jan with Dominic's reaction, but she realized it was Mikhail's doing. At that moment, she reassured Noi that she had come on Luca's orders to save Dominic. Mikhail took out his book and told her she wouldn't be able to use her weapon for a while. The scene changed quickly as Noi realized that Vanitas was aggressive and didn't care about hurting himself, but he wouldn't let anyone get hurt because of him, offering peace. Things escalated quickly, and they made amends. Mikhail suddenly snapped and questioned Vanitas about why he hadn't killed Noi, despite Noi trying to drink his blood. Noi was taken aback, explaining he had only attempted to force Mikhail to drink Vanitas' blood to kill him. Mikhail revealed he just wanted to reunite with his brother and father, but since Noi didn't obey his orders, he would command Dominic to act. When Mikhail realized Dominic wouldn't follow his commands, he summoned the vampires using his book and ordered them to kill everyone present. But something unexpected happened as if the book was consuming Mikhail, causing him to fade away. Vanitas urged Noi to forget about him and leave, warning that Mikhail's book was spiraling out of control and the entire place might explode. As the location began to crumble, Dominic used her sword to encase everything in ice, protecting those she cared about, and Jan couldn't help but admire her. The scene shifted to reveal Noi's master, who removed his hat for the first time and welcomed Jan. They discovered he was the former Marquis of the Desade family, the kind man Mikhail had mentioned who saved him. Later, Mikhail carried him and told Vanitas his name was Count Saint Germain, asking him to use that name next time. Noi soon lost consciousness and awoke later in a hotel, where Amelia told him everyone had been worried about him. She mentioned that Dominic and Jan were talking, and that Vanitas was upstairs, and she would prepare breakfast for them. Noi then went upstairs to see Vanitas. When Vanitas saw him, he asked about his injuries. Noi admitted he wasn't fine and asked Vanitas to come downstairs, saying he would leave if his presence bothered him. But Vanitas replied that he was waiting for Mikhail. Noi was shocked to see Mikhail again, and Mikhail once again asked him what had happened, as he only remembered losing his arm that day. Vanitas confessed that Luna had her real name stolen by someone, nearly turning her into a monster. He joined his clan and killed the person using his power, treating cursed bearers until he found the one who took Luna's name. Mikhail tried to convince convince him to bring their father back. But Vanitas insisted the dead don't return. Mikhail vowed he would find a way to bring him back. Vanitas then asked Mikhail about Germain's plan, but Mikhail claimed he didn't know. Before leaving, Mikhail stated that Dominic hadn't killed anyone, as the vampires attacked because of the book's use. He urged Vanitas to tell everyone the truth, as it was kind, and he didn't want Dominic to get into trouble because of him. After that, Noi asked Vanitas what he would do next. Vanitas said he would investigate Germain, continue treating cursed bearers, and seek his revenge.